Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Joining us today to fill us in on a new approach to beef cattle feeding is Dr. Brian Dorcey, Director of Veterinary Strategy for Farmers Business Network. Welcome, Brian. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
For those of you that are joining us online, we thank you for taking time to tune in. If you happen to have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat area there on your screen. If you're joining us from social media, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, simply post your questions directly in those channels. So FBN had some significant news that it released this week, or late last week, I guess you might say, with the release of a new feed aimed at reducing feed to gain ratios and improving profitability in beef production. So Brian, talk to us about that and how Profectus Feed works.
Yeah, exciting times at Farmers Business Network. The livestock team is excited to bring forward the Profectus line of feed, and it brings to a kind of an endpoint some of Dr. Monty Curley, who's kind of the thought leader behind the Profectus line of feed of balancing beef cattle diets on amino acid versus crude protein. So we take another layer deeper approach at the protein requirements of beef cattle to maximize their genetic potential. So Dr. Curley, who was on staff at the University of Minnesota or Missouri for a long time, has joined our group and has brought this new approach to feeding cattle forward. And FBN is excited to roll out Profectus at scale to show producers additional profits and additional growth potential in their cattle.
We've always looked at amino acid balancing in the monogastrics, but now sounds like we're really digging in and looking a lot more, at least at beef cattle. We've done some on dairy too, but looking more at the beef cattle side. That is kind of a whole new way of looking at things.
Yeah, the monogastric folks, the pig and poultry folks, have been doing this for years. And one of the unlocks in Dr. Curley's system is how we get those amino acids through the rumen, which has traditionally been thought of as a blocker to specifically formulate for amino acids, get those through the rumen to the hindgut and transfer those into building blocks for lean and efficient growth. So Dr. Curley and the team, we've completed a number of research trials that have demonstrated our ability to improve rumen health and get more pounds of gain per pound of feed than we traditionally been able to garner on traditionally formulated diets. And as we've brought that healthy rumen and better performance, we've actually been able to put more money back in our producers' pocket. And so those producers that were part of our early commercial application of the Profectus feed line have been able to garner, somewhere between $60 and $140 of additional profitability on their beef herds just by changing the supplement and the way that we supplement our beef cattle. So we're very excited about the Profectus approach and what it brings for profitability to most feeding operations.
So you've listed a few, but what are the kind of the key advantages of Profectus feeds for beef producers and the beef production industry as a whole? And then let's look at how does it address any evolving challenges or needs of the sector? Are we seeing a lot of, different ways of thinking about things out there when it comes to feeding beef cattle?
Yeah, I think we could lump those into three buckets. I think we've increased productivity by taking a closer look at these amino acids and how we feed those. So we've unlocked a productivity benefit, which directly transfers into profitability because we do get more pounds of gain per pound of feed that we feed on the farm. And then I think there's a third bucket that we address, and that's sustainability. How do we continue to feed the world with the resources that we have at hand on our individual farms? And so I think as we look at those three buckets as a whole, Profectus checks all those boxes, and it can create generational wealth as we go over and above, as we use this technology to go over and above what we've traditionally balanced in beef cattle diets. And so if I've got a farm that's using Profectus and they can generate more dollars per head all of a sudden that farm's more competitive, they're more sustainable, and they can absolutely start having conversations about how do we pass that farm down to the next generation. So by no more than changing how we look at the feed, we've really been able to impact family farms, which is what FBN is always about.
So when you talk about sustainability, is that based on the fact that you're just getting more efficient in the feed? You're looking at that. Is there any from a waste standpoint or anything else that might be impacted?
Yeah, and we are continuing to have those further as we launch this. We are going to continue to evaluate, manure value and what that brings to the farm. But right now, we've done some because of the efficiencies we pick up. We can actually grow more pounds of beef with less acres of crop than we have. So you talk about looking at carbon scores and some of those other things. Those are futuristic projects down the road that I think are going to be more impactful. But today, just on productivity that translates into profitability, we've got that unlocked with our approach to the feed market. Absolutely. So there's more to come on those other fronts.
Stay tuned, as they say, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what inspired the development of this technology within the context of FBN's goals?
I think one of the major costs on every farm is feed cost or feedstuffs and feed costs. And so as we went out and looked at the beef cattle industry, we looked at what's out there that is that that is available to be upgraded. And so as we talked and we're building out our feed program, fate or whatever you want to call it brought us together with Dr. Monty Curley, whose research was largely thought to be not applicable at scale. And so as we brought Dr. Curley on staff, his research translated into the Profectus line of feed. So the amino acids, were always traditionally thought to not be able to get through the rumen. And so this disruptive technology is kind of woven into the DNA of FBN and who we are as a company, as a disruptor in the ag field. So this is a technology that is hard for some people to get their heads wrapped around because it is a different thought process. The other thing is not everybody has the same algorithm of how we balance these amino acids and what ratios and what makes them important. And so as Dr. Curley's system has unlocked the utility of those amino acids, that's what's translated directly into performance.
Have you taken a look yet at like different breeds and how they respond? Is there a difference in formulation when it comes to say you're working with Angus or you're working with, other breeds?
I would say right now that to get very breed specific, we're looking at some of the dairy cross animals that are coming our way, especially with the short or the small nature of the United States beef cow herd right now. So we see the dairy cross animal as one avenue of application of this amino acid approach, and then we've of course got the native cattle that are also on the program. So there are slight differences between those two populations of animals, but at the end of the day, those are the ones that we've got the most research in to date at this point. So we do see them respond differently, but similarly, if that makes sense. The native cattle are going to have more of a homogeneous response, and obviously the dairy cross with the narrow genetic pattern that those animals have are going to have a pretty homogeneous response, but both positive in the way of amino acid approach.
So how can FBN members access and implement the system on their farms as well as perhaps just get some additional information or resources?
Yeah, our approach is backed by experts. So we've got veterinarians and nutritionists on staff to answer questions and support the Profectus product. FBN.com is our platform. All good things going on in the livestock sector are available at FBN.com. So we drive people there. There is a form there where people can go in and line out what their requests are, so they can request a feed consult, and that's kind of what gets the ball rolling on a lot of the farms that we deal with. So a feed consult will spawn a call from the local sales rep, and then from there they'll pull in the industry experts, whether it be a veterinarian or a a nutritionist to help solve problems on the farm. And I think that's what's unique about FBN Livestock is we are a full service, both health and nutrition problem solver and a partner on your farm.
So is this a product that if you're say a cattle producer that you'd want to maybe just kind of start small with and kind of see how it's working, or is this something that you say, okay, let's just turn over and use Profectus feed on the whole herd? How would you suggest that people approach this? And maybe it has to do with their own tolerance for for change. But what are you
Right.
thinking there?
Yeah, so it's been interesting to watch as all the preliminary work leading up to Perfectus launch. We had everything from a feed yard giving us one pen to try to other feed yards seeing the data that was accumulated on those pens and turning the whole yard over to us. And so I would say the middle of the road response in those two ends of the spectrum would be a feed yard would start with a pen, and as they start to see the difference in the Profectus feed cattle grow apart from the control cattle or their traditional diets, we've had many farms at that point flip over from one pen to the whole feed yard because there are noticeable differences in the cattle on the Profectus feed versus the ones that were conventionally fed, depending on how they were conventionally fed. So we've got enough good closeout data right now and um, impactful studies that to leave that 60 to $140 on the table that Perfectus could provide to a farm that lots of times feed yards that are interested choose to put the whole feed yard on.
Any final thoughts or words of wisdom to leave our audience with today, Brian?
No, no, thanks for having us. One of the things that I think is these are exciting times in the beef cattle feeding industry. Perfectus is going to be a revolutionary approach. We have had competitors try to mimic us, but have not figured out the unlock yet to what our secret sauce is. But by improving our ruminant health, we've increased productivity, which translates to profitability, and everybody right now, we in the beef cattle world, we need a sustainability story. And so the Perfectus feed system, checks all those boxes.
And you're not gonna tell us what that secret sauce is, are you?
No, no, just like the recipe for Coca-Cola, right?
Right. Very good. Well, and thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Brian Dorcey, Director of Veterinary Strategy for Farmers Business Network. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Sarah. Have a good day.
For those of you that have joined us online, we thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you spending time with us. A reminder that all Feedstuffs 365 segments are available online at feedstuffs.com. Simply go to Feedstuffs, scroll down until you find the Feedstuffs 365 box, and you can watch all the sessions you'd like or share them also with your colleagues. Until next time, for Feedstuffs, I'm Sarah Muirhead.